Our recipe today is for pâte brisée, which in French just means a dough or a crust or a paste that's very friable. In other words, that it breaks up easily. Here we would just call this pie dough. And the basic formula for this particular food is 3 parts flour plus 2 parts fat plus 1 part liquid. Hence the name 3-2-1 pie dough. So you might use, for example, 300 grams of flour plus 200 grams of fat plus 100 grams of liquid, and the yield then would be 600 grams of dough, plus when you're mixing it, add salt to taste. Since the ingredients flour and water don't come in fixed quantities, but butter does, I like to use a recipe that uses 1 stick of butter. Now, 1 stick of butter is equal to 114 grams. And we know from our conversion ratio that 1 pound of butter weighs 454 grams. So 1/4 of that is 114 grams. Simply 454 divided by 4. And now we have a metric quantity for our butter. So this recipe is going to use 1 stick of butter. And since we know that the fat is 2x, we can solve for x just by knowing that 2x is going to be 114 grams, divide it by 2, and x equals 57 grams, and that'll give us the amount of flour and water that we want to use. So the formula using 1 stick of butter would be 3x, or 3 times 57, equals 171 grams of flour. The fat we know already, that's going to be 1 stick. 2x equals 2 times 57, or 114 grams of butter. That's 1 stick. And the liquid or the water is going to be 1x, or 1 times 57 equals 57 grams of water. Now with water, you have a convenient conversion ratio, because 1 cubic centimeter or 1 milliliter or 1 gram of water are all the same. So it's easy to look on your measuring cup to get 57 grams of water by just measuring 57 milliliters or 57 cc's of water. Plus we're going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. And this is the recipe that we're going to use today. So how much pie dough will we get if we make a recipe based on 1 stick of butter? Well, remember that x equals 57 grams, and we've got 3x of flour plus 2x of butter plus 1x of water equals 6x. 6 times 57, it's going to yield 342 grams of dough, and that'll be enough for a top and bottom of a regular sized pie. You can always roll it a little thinner if you want to, or leave it a little thicker if you want to. But this will be enough for a top and bottom of a pie. Step 1 will be to measure all of the ingredients ahead of time. We'll measure out 171 grams of flour, 114 grams of butter, that'll be 1 stick, and 57 grams of water plus 1 teaspoon of salt, which we'll just put in with the flour. And then we'll chill or freeze the butter and the flour so that all of the ingredients are cold. This will prevent the fat from melting during the mixing process in the food processor, and will give us a better result than if we use soft butter. The butter should always be hard, at least chilled, and preferably cut into pieces and frozen, and I'll show you how I do that. So the first thing we're going to do is measure out the flour that we need. And I'll turn on the scale just by pressing the on-off switch, and you can see that it comes on. And I've used a paper food tray for my scale trays because they're easily disposable and they hold about the right amount of material. So I'm going to select the grams by pressing the mode, and it goes through pounds, ounces, pounds and ounces to pounds, and now it shows grams. And I'm going to weigh this out in grams, and we need 171 grams of flour. There's 175. We'll take out a little bit. There's 171 grams of flour. Now I have my butter in a small plastic container, and I've cut this butter into pieces and put it in the freezer, but I want to check the weight of it. So I'll take the same container that I have the butter in, I'll put it on the scale, and I'll press the tare button in the lower right hand corner, and that will tell me how much weight is on there, and it'll change it to 0. So if I take this off, I know that this weighed 12 grams because it shows minus 12 grams. Now if I put this on here, it'll just show the weight of the butter, and it's 111 grams. It's lost a little bit of water because it was in the freezer for a few days. So I've cut this butter into small pieces like this, and I've put it in the freezer, and it's ready to use. We'll get the food processor out and get it going in a minute. Now I'll just weigh out 57 grams of water. So I can use this same empty container and pour out 57 grams of water. It's not very much water. There's 57 grams of water, and we know, because we know the metric system, this would also be 57 cc's or 57 milliliters of water, don't we? Okay, so that's all of the ingredients except the salt, and I'll add that while we're mixing it. Step 2 is to cut the butter and flour together in the food processor, pulsing several times until it's fully combined. Then add the water while the food processor is running. Blend until the dough comes together. So we'll do that now. So I'll start by adding the flour to the food processor. And I'm using the steel blade. You could use the dough blade, but the steel blade works just fine. I'm going to put all the flour in. And I'm going to put in a teaspoon of salt, just like this. Put the safety cover on, and I'm going to pulse it. And that's the reason why it's not necessary to sift the flour for this kind of a thing. So we're going to drop these in, these little pieces of butter like this. This butter is real hard, it's been in the freezer, but that's what we want. So there's the butter. Everything's ready to go. So as you can see, the butter and the flour completely, there's no little bits of butter left in there. It's all pretty well homogenized. Just like that. So the next thing to do is to add the water while it's running. So I'm going to turn it on, just like that. And I'm going to add the water right down this chute. Just like that. And I'm going to let it keep running until it comes together. You can see it's starting to come together a little bit now. And if I pick some up, it'll stick together like this. So we've got little pieces of flour and butter and water together. We've got enough moisture in there now. I'm going to process it just a moment more. So it's fully together now. It's all homogenized, everything is the same piece. Step 3 is to remove the dough from the food processor, divide it into 2 equal parts, form flat balls, put them in the refrigerator, and I like to wrap them in plastic or put them in a plastic bag so they can equalize a little bit in the refrigerator. So here's the dough. It'll come together just beautifully now. And it's real cold, so it's pretty stiff, but you can see that it's smooth and it doesn't want to crack. So I'm going to divide it into 2, just like this. I'm going to take each one of these and I'm going to form it into a ball. And it'll be a little bit sticky. I'm going to squish it like this. Okay, there's that one. Here's the other one. And the dough is going to be a little bit sticky, but that's the way it should be. Now, while you're doing this, you could put a little bit of flour on your board if you wanted to. Okay. All right, we've got some plastic wrap out. We'll just do it this way, just like that. You can fold it over like that. That on there. Put this one on top of it, fold it over again. And then these go in the refrigerator for a while so that the flour can hydrate a little bit more. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's 2 pieces like this. Each of these pieces would be good for a top or bottom of a pie crust. And we'll come back and we'll do some fun things with this pie crust in a minute. So here's one of the discs that we got out, and it's nice and cold now. I'm going to roll it out. So, this is just an odd-shaped piece of dough right now, and I'm going to lift it up. It stays together pretty well. I'm going to put it in this. This is a half size or a quarter size pan. And what we're going to do with this is just a sample to see how this dough tastes. So this is just going to be like a dough cookie. And I'm going to put some cinnamon sugar on it. We all like that. I'm going to divide it up just in convenient sizes. And the oven is heating over there. It's almost hot enough. And I'll put this in the oven for 15 or 20 minutes and we'll see how it looks when it comes out.